What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of How to Get Away with the JD. As you can see, new guest. I love my revolving door that I have going on each time I do an episode. And since we're still practicing social distancing because of the corona, we're not able to meet in person. But I think this has helped in order to bring some new faces onto the show. Today, I think we're going to talk about a pretty important topic. But before we get to that, I want my guests to introduce themselves. So I will let Joy go first.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Joy Applewhite, and I'm a current 2L at American University, Washington College of Law.
Hi, everyone. I'm AJ Mackey. I'm a 2L with Phelan at Mizzou Law.
Yeah, so I have my lovely guest here today, and we're going to be talking about something I think that's pretty important is self-care. And when I first thought of the topic of self-care, it was before the corona had hit. So my idea of self-care was a little different, but now I think given that everyone's like work from home, school from home, I think it's a pretty interesting topic to have because it's not that easy to do work from home, right? So I think my first question for you guys, just because Zoom University, I have to ask, how is your transitioning from being like the discipline from being in actual class and moving to your living room or your bedroom?
It's definitely different. I have a studio apartment, and I rent from a landlord, so they're right above me. So sometimes they're here, sometimes they're not. So getting used to working all the time from home was a big adjustment, but luckily they were like, hey, we'll open this office space for you that you can work in just in case you want to, get outside of your room, because it's an adjustment. Especially when you're living single.
True.
Yeah, I'm one of those people where I could only really do work at the library. It's like the second I get home, I'm completely tuned out, done with everything. So I had to actually order a desk. I have a desk here. Stayed in Columbia, which has helped. I know my family would have distracted me back home. But yeah, it's definitely been a tough transition.
So what do you guys think? Because I know maybe your self-care habits looked a little bit different. We were actually in school and you were able to separate your spaces and separate your time. But what do you think is one of the biggest self-care adjustments for you personally that you had to undertake with switching between going from in-person to online?
I think for me, the hardest part was kind of finding a routine. So with normal classes and stuff, I feel like that's the best way for self-care is once you get yourself in a routine, everything kind of falls into place. But with this, it's kind of waking up all over the place, waking up at like 11, 12. So once I kind of finally got myself in a routine, that definitely helped a lot for me.
Yeah, same. It was like really just adjusting to everything because it seemed like every week something new would happen. And when we did our transition online, it was like over spring break. So it's like spring break wasn't really a spring break because it's like you're constantly getting emails about the updates and how things will be once we return to school. So it's just like I had to compartmentalize like when I was going to pay attention to emails, when time would be for school, and when time would just be for me, because it was a lot coming in these last couple weeks, and it just seemed like it was piling on. So I just had to step back and be like, okay, what works for me? And what do I need to do to make myself feel like I'm performing at my best?
Okay. I think I'd have to agree. Like the transition was odd for us, for AJ and I. It was kind of abrupt. We were literally in school one day. I said this on a previous episode. I was literally in the middle of interviewing a witness because I'm in the prosecution clinic to present for a case that I was supposed to do the following week. And then we get the email saying, "Hey, by the way, we're done. Like you guys will be done for
nowhere."
I said, what? Like, I was so confused. And what made it worse is it was the week before our spring break. So we get cut off. We move to home. Then we go for spring break. And then we come back. And one of my poor professors, and I feel so bad for her, like, she wasn't able to, like, transition right away with the transition. So like that's like a week worth of class that we had missed, and I still honestly haven't made that up in my head yet. So that's neither here nor there. Coping mechanisms. But so it's been really interesting. And I think separating space is very important in times like this because I'm fortunate enough to have a 2-bedroom, so I have a study in here, but I've been like in that study since we've transitioned, and it's hard. Like I look at the same scenery every day. I'm in class. Some days I don't have my camera on just because I'm just going through it in existence. So luckily I got some patio furniture. So I spent some time outside in class the other day, turned the camera on, showed my face and all that. But I do think it's hard. So my question to you guys is, I'm gonna go back to when we were in a somewhat normal state of being. What was one thing that you found yourself doing for like peace during the time when we were actually like on campus and in class? What was that one thing that you took away for like your self-care?
Well, this year I made it a goal to make sure that I go to the gym more faithfully. And I loved going to the sauna in the steam room. Like that was my inner peace, like getting the sweat out
Mm-hmm.
before and after. That was my place to go to. And now it's just like, okay, that's not my place anymore. But I can still work out and make sure that I'm, physically fit and like in my zone still and meeting my fitness goals. So I've transitioned to working out outside instead to kind of get some fresh air from time to time.
That was actually going to be mine as well. I think that's a really good way to kind of free your mind and get away from school. But another thing that I actually started doing this semester, I tried to pick up cooking a little bit. So whenever I got back from school in the library, I just kind of decompress, try out new recipes. So not a very good cook, but definitely peaceful.
I don't blame you, man. I mean, like it's the time to like pick up new hobbies and whatnot. So why not? Why not burn down the kitchen a little bit and figure it out? I don't know. For me, I think my goal was to go to the gym more this year when when we made our New Year's resolutions and all that good stuff. I did well in the beginning. I would like to give myself personal kudos. I did well in the beginning, and then life happened. So I think my biggest thing was like I had separated time. So like I like watching TV, right? So I made sure most, if not all of my work was done before TV time, which is about 7 o'clock roughly for me. And I would just sit here and watch TV, and like it was always an escape because I'm watching like either something that's fake or like somebody else's life that's not my own. I'm just like, feels good to know that I'm not the only one who's like full of mess, right? So I think that used to be my thing, but now being home, I find myself running a lot more. I used to do track in high school, so running should be like a thing of mine, but it's so painful to do as you get older. The joints don't work the same as they used to. But so that's my
They
thing.
don't.
So what's been y'all's thing for like current Rona in terms of like keeping up with yourself, keeping their self-care and your mental state?
In general, just for most days, I've just been trying to get outside in general. So whether that's sitting on a balcony or taking like a walk, it's nice that I have a dog, so I've been taking him out a lot, walking him around, playing fetch. It's nice that the weather's been perfect recently. I think this would be a lot harder if it was during the winter, if we were just all stuck inside. So definitely been getting out and doing that.
I'm from the South originally, and living in DC, it's still winter here. So I don't like going outside until I see that it's sunny outside, but I definitely agree that getting fresh air and taking a walk is one of the best things ever because it's like one of those things that we took for granted. And it's like, oh, you actually have to be precautious when you're going for your walks and you have to be mindful of others and sharing the sidewalks. So that's been a nice getaway when it is warm. But for me, I definitely like trying to try new recipes. I made homemade peach cobbler recently. So like really just having time in the kitchen, playing my 90s R&B, having a chill moment, no one to disturb me as I cook, and just savor the meal after has been really nice because for me, like as the Rona set in and adjusting to life at home, it's been difficult. And most of my self-care routines that I had before I found weren't working for me. So I've been trying to figure out and try new things during this time.
Okay. So that's interesting. AJ, you brought up an interesting thing. You think it would have been it would have been worse in the winter. I kind of wish if I was like picking when the Rona happened, right? I kind of wish it was in the winter because I can sit down in the wintertime. Like I can do that. I don't have a problem with sitting in the crib in the winter. It's getting nice outside. I want to go brunch. Like self-care for me, brunch. I would love to go have a nice brunch or something. So I mean, I don't know. Here we are. It is what it is. So what do you guys think is something unhealthy in terms of self-care that you found yourself doing in the past that this is kind of like help you notice and steer away from?
Definitely the negative self-talk because I can definitely down myself too often. And I'm just like, okay, now you're at this moment where you're by yourself and you can just really control your thoughts and be like, okay, what's a positive I can replace with this negative? And really just feel better about myself because like being inside, you're like, am I performing at the best rate that I could, or am I like really half assing things because things are now past fail? So it's just like really quieting that voice that's like, no, you're not doing enough. You need to do more. You're being really lazy today. So I need you to get it together, and replacing that with like, oh, you're at home all day. You don't have to work all day. You can like have time to yourself and not feel guilty about it. It's okay.
Yeah, mine's pretty similar. Just really focusing on myself. I feel like during normal class times, I like always getting caught up in things. Everything's like moving around so quickly. Whereas now I can kind of really focus on myself, make sure I'm getting enough sleep, make sure I'm eating healthy, exercising. Obviously, school is super important too, but it gives me the opportunity to focus on other things in life and not just studying all day. So that's actually been really nice for me.
That's you guys are so I would have to say my negative that I think I noticed more was that I used to like drink religiously a glass of wine like every night or so. And so I've paid attention a little bit more to that just because like, unhealthy coping mechanisms, things like that. I want to make sure that I'm still putting my best foot forward. But I would also say that little voice in your head, because like this paper that I have due today and tomorrow, they're both revisions. So I'm like, okay, you put in the effort the first time, like why bother? Like, and then there's a part of me that's like, okay, well, you still want like to show your professor that like you can still do the work, so do it. So I think it's an interesting balance that you have to strike doing things like this. But like Joy, you've done this. You've talked about self-care. You've talked about like what this looks like on different levels, especially with the TED Talk. So what is something that and like your experience that you found interesting with doing like this and focusing on this topic?
Mm, Definitely letting people know that self-care looks different for everyone too, because there's like different suggestions on how you should self-care. But what I've found is like what works for one might not work for all. So my best experience has been like sharing different parts of like what you can do so people don't feel limited of, oh well, meditation is not working for me. Like I cannot be still for that long. I can't do this. This is not my type of self-care. So like just making sure that things are broad and people know like self-care isn't just limited to one thing. It's what works for you and what's healthy for you at the end of the day, because meditation is not for me.
That's funny because I like meditation, but my girlfriend, she does like yoga, and I went to a yoga class before they like shut everything down, right? Yoga, it's a lot harder than it looks on TV or how they make it out. So like yoga's not my thing, but like meditation is my thing. But I don't necessarily like meditate sitting here monk style. Just I meditate as I run. I think that's an interesting balance that I like to strike. So I have like the music in the background that's soft, and then I'm running with my thoughts, and it's so I think like you said, like what works for one does not, it just doesn't work for all. Like there are so many ways, wrong and right, to do self-care. I will say that, but being cognizant of like what that looks like for you in particular is always important. AJ, what because like you have a dog, you have class, you have all these other things that you have to balance. What is something in terms of self-care and like just you outside of like physical activities that you think is important for you to stay at least mentally sharp in doing what you do?
I would think, I think for me, it's definitely getting enough sleep. I've always tried to focus on that throughout my life, and it's so hard with like school and everything else. So I've really been trying to get 8 hours of sleep every night, and that just keeps me mentally sharp. I'm trying to go to bed earlier and wake up earlier. Sometimes I go to bed later and wake up later, but as long as I'm getting those 8 hours, I think that's helped a lot.
Hey, I don't know if I've had 8 hours of sleep. Today was the first day that I actually slept in. I can't flex. Today was the first day that I was able to, I think I went to bed at like 12 last night, maybe 12:30, and I was able to sleep until like 9:30-ish. So today was the first day where I was like really in bed, like I don't have anything to do. Must be nice.
So nice.
Man, let me tell you. But then I also realized I probably should have woke up earlier to start this paper. So again, balance. It is what it is. But like in the profession that we plan on going into, I guess there's like times where you really can't avoid stress, and stress will just creep up at any moment, especially in law school, right? Especially with the competitive nature. So if you guys were talking to your 1L self, what is one piece of advice that you would offer in terms of self-care and staying on top of that?
For me, I would want to tell myself not to worry about grades. I'm sure that comes up a lot, but that stressed me out so much. You said the competitive nature and just almost just competing with myself at the same time was so stressful. So going back and looking back on that, I definitely would have told myself not to worry about it. I would be in the same spot, I think, regardless if I stressed myself out or if I didn't. Um, and so I think that's really important for self-care overall.
Yeah, I would agree with not stressing over grades. Um, at the beginning of our 1L year, the Office of Academic Excellence had us like write a note card to ourselves about anything you wanted to, like what would keep you motivated during law school. And I went to that card so many times throughout law school. And my card for me was just saying, I need you just remember life into law school and you're here to be a social engineer. So the grades, the competitiveness, study groups, all of that does not matter because it's just a class just to get you to your next level, that you shouldn't have to stress about what's temporary because you'll get through this and this too shall pass and you'll be an attorney. That's all that matters.
Look, I this too shall pass, because Lord. No, I mean I think you both bring up like really interesting points, especially about grades. I think grades, if not number one, definitely number two in terms of like stressors in law school for students, whether it's the waiting for the grade. I mean that process is that's a whole nother topic that we can talk days and days about. But either waiting for the grades or like once you get the grades, oh, what does this mean? And then waiting for the rank that comes after that. Just that whole month long or so process, depending on what your school um, procedure is just, I think that's definitely nerve wracking. But You both bring up like really good points. If I could talk to my 1L self, I would probably have to go with grades because I remember distinctly in because we had the opportunity to do like winter externships, and the grades came out around the time I was doing my winter externship. So I'm sitting in the library and somebody sends a text message saying, "Hey, grades are out." I promise you, if my heart could like sink into the bottom of my foot, it did. And I'm just like, okay, 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 okay. And then I get the grades. Mind you, this is our 1L year, and the way Mizzou's grading scale, it's not like other schools. So I'm looking at these numbers and I'm like, well, what the hell does this mean? Like, I've waited all this time. What the hell does this mean? So I was like really stressed even after the grades because it's like, okay, I think I did good, but I can go back to school and
So
they'll
you
probably
gotta,
tell me like, hey, this is awful. So like I just didn't know. So I think grades would definitely be my top pick. But what do you guys think is something that you, because I think everyone has had at least one summer job, what is something that you guys have seen in practice will probably be a stressor to either cope with or try to avoid once we graduate and move into the actual legal field?
I'm not the best at like managing time slash workload. And so at least this past summer, I was given, like a handful of projects at the same time with different due dates. And so I would kind of wait, way too long to start those or work on one for too long. So I think just managing those time constraints is going to help a lot with stress. Once you're able to manage all of that, you can kind of space everything out. You don't have to stay up until 10 or 11 trying to get something done by 12. It's definitely harder than it's pretty hard, but doable.
So I think for me, it's more personal because I want to be a public defender. And this past summer, I worked at a capital defense firm. So I think my issue would be more connected to like the attachment to clients and like wanting to like be the best attorney for them because like the system has already failed them so much that it's just like, okay, I cannot, give 50% if I feel like I'm at 50%, like I want to give that extra percentage that I might not have that day. So I think that's for me the most challenging thing. It's like the field that I want to go into is already emotionally draining and the caseloads are so heavy and it's quite ridiculous. Like trying to talk to people on why the criminal justice system is problematic and they just look at you like nothing's wrong with it. Everything is wrong with these systems everywhere. So yeah, definitely just being frustrated with the status quo is probably just going to be me irritated all day some days.
That actually, you bring up a really good point that I kind of want to touch on specifically for you, Joy. So what do you think, or at least when you did work, what is one thing that you found yourself doing to separate that personal attachment? Because like I've done prosecution work and then I've also done work with like um, wrongly convicted prisoners. So there is an attachment that you naturally form with like the case and like your self-interest and then the involvement and really trying to get to the core of those things. So what is something that you found yourself or find yourself doing to like really separate that space? Because it, like you said, it can be really emotionally draining at times, and at other times it's just like, well, what the fuck? The criminal system is like this jaded towards certain things. So like, how do you really balance that?
It's difficult, and I'm still honestly trying to figure out how to do it properly. I know my supervisor say like he takes his weekends off, and unless he has a big case, he doesn't work on weekends. So I had a little bit of that type of energy this past summer, and I would enjoy being in New Orleans and going out with my cohorts and going out with my roommates and like getting to know them on the weekends. But if like I felt like I had a fight that I just needed to put more time in, I would allow myself to like work on it and still connected. But it is very frustrating. I think using my passion and my frustrations has been um, a benefit to an extent because you need that type of energy to a degree, but it's just like all trying to figure out how to work it out in a healthy way.
That's actually a really good point. So for self-care, Joy, again, this is something that you've covered quite a bit between TED Talks and all. What is something you would like to challenge in terms of like the status quo of self-care after doing some of the research that you have? What is something that you think probably needs a little bit more pushback in this conversation in terms of like what self-care means or looks like for people?
I think it's an issue that I've seen most recently is that people confuse self care with your needs for mental health, and those are two different things. And people should realize that like what you need for like your mental health and making sure that that's in check is totally different from your self-care. Like your self-care activity is like a little rejuvenation and like making sure that you have mental health access and access to therapy and access to counseling, especially as a law student, is so different than self-care. And I feel like a lot of people in the profession and in law schools think that those two things are close enough that they can achieve the one purpose, but it's not. So that would be my challenge is to um work on changing the thought process of self-care and mental health um needs, because my undergrad degree is psychology. So it's just like, yeah, we need both. We don't need one. We need both.
Hey, that's real. So AJ, what and rejuvenating and talking about rejuvenation, what is something that you feel like really brings you back or like at least keeps you anchored would probably another be a good way of thinking about it. So like what's something that you feel like brings you back or keeps you anchored in this process? Because we're 2 years in, about to be, honestly, we're 3 years in at this point. I like to say I'm a 3L. Like I really want to change my Twitter bio to 3L so
Rising
bad.
3L.
Like just give me my title at this point. So what is something you feel like has either kept you rejuvenated throughout law school or like keeps you anchored to the point where like you can still do this, because it is hard?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess just thinking about it in the long term has really helped. So just thinking about, 1 year in the broad scheme of everything, not that long. I like to call myself a 3L too. So I mean, really, I got one more year, done with every doctrinal class except for one, and then I can kind of just take, yeah, it's huge. Kind of just take electives from there. Try and take fun. I think I want to sign up for more interesting classes next semester. So things that I'm actually interested in, maybe like sports law, or I'll have to look at the classes, but doing things along those lines has really helped.
Okay. So I'm glad we're all on agreement that we're all 3Ls. That's our self-care for today. We're all 3Ls. That's affirmation, words of affirmation. That's it. We're here, we're there. Awesome. So typically at this time I would like, take a break for sponsorship, but I always joke and say, due to the Rona, nobody's handing out money as it is. So we're just gonna keep rolling because ain't nobody paying your boy to keep this podcast up. However, if anybody would like to sponsor, the email is in the podcast description. Please feel free. I can work with all things and everything. So at this time, I would do listener letters, right? And I've been digging and digging and digging through the inbox to find some letters that are more on point for today's conversation, instead of for self-care, instead of just like any and everything. Because I do have a couple of things just randomly in here from law students. So I found a few for us to discuss. The first one is pretty simple. I'm gonna pull it up right here. This comes from a young lady who is a pre-law student, and she would like to ask, what is Okay, so she frames it in the terms of like burnout. And for those who don't know what burnout is, it's literally like when you've done so much or you keep like pushing yourself and pushing yourself to the point where like you're literally past the point of exhaustion. Think of it like a candle, and it's just like that wick and you slowly getting down there. So that's what a burnout is. She frames it in the sense of a burnout. And she asks, how do you cope with the feeling of burning out when you're doing like coursework? So if anybody would like to answer, I have my answer, but open it up to the floor.
I think my best suggestion is you just have to step away for like whatever time you need, because sometimes when you're reading and you're doing work for a long period of time, you start to become a zombie and you start blinking out and it's like, what am I even reading? And if you can't remember what you read, it's like it's pointless, you're wasting your time. So yeah, definitely just take some time, step away, watch your favorite reality show, watch your favorite, show that you're currently binging on, and take that break. The law book will be there when you come back to it. It's not going anywhere at all. I'm telling you. So yeah, just give your time to space out and do what you need to do for you.
uh, like a strict cutoff time. So it was around like 7 o'clock. Just drop everything. I think the best advice that I got going into law school was just to treat it like a job. So do it from like 8 to 5, 8 to 6, and then just be done with it. Like Joy said, it's guaranteed to be there tomorrow. That's for sure. So, cut it off, make yourself some food, go to bed early, and just pick it back up tomorrow. And that definitely helps. I have some friends that, will pull all nighters or stay up until 1 or 2. And that's like the quickest way to a burnout. Definitely.
Yes, I have an all-nighter story too. Like, I'm not the type of law student that likes coffee. And y'all, as a first semester one, y'all, I was like, okay, let me try what everyone is doing. Let me try to stay in the library all night and, just survive on coffee. My body was like, no, you didn't. I got you. So walking home at 2 in the morning from the school, I was like, okay, I'm gonna make it home, right? Never again, like never again.
No, that's real. I mean, like I pulled all nighters in undergrad, right? But I think this is a different caliber when you pull an all nighter in law school. I this is a time management 101 of don't do. And so I was on a competition team this year, and we had a competition in Chicago, and I had a paper for my wrongful conviction class due that Monday. And so we were traveling back Sunday. I hadn't started the paper, hadn't read. And this is my fault because I had like the documents for at least 2 weeks, right? And so I was like, I can get it done. I got home at 5. From 5 to 7, maybe 8 a.m., I was up reading a 250-page court transcript and trying to write this paper. And when I say I think I had to turn it in at 9 o'clock. So I'm like finishing up, running, take a shower, go, then get to the law school to turn it in. Like I was useless for the rest of the day in those classes. So for me, my biggest piece of advice when it comes to a burnout is manage your time. Like it's I there are times where you'll probably be up a little later than you would like. Cool, awesome. But I think managing your time to the point where it's like, what your tasks are. And then like AJ and Joy said, like having like cutoff times in terms of like when you're not going to do anything because you paid all this money for those books. So unless somebody stole them, they will be there the next day. So make sure y'all like really prioritize what you're doing. And it's just one way to avoid a burnout. Now, if you do end up burning out, take a day to yourself. A lot of teachers understand, like if you send them an email saying, hey, um, don't feel well, or like I'm going through something right now, most teachers are pretty accommodating in that aspect. And so they got you covered. The next letter, I can find it. I hate when Google does this. Okay. So the next letter is, what is one fun activity, I will say one fun activity that you do to keep your mind off of law school?
For me, I would say it's honestly video games. Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of what I do after I make food or dinner or something, I'll take like an hour to play video games, kind of numb my brain. It's kind of a guilty pleasure, but definitely the best for me. Get away from school, play with friends usually too. It helps a lot.
What video games?
Right now, Call of Duty,
Okay.
but Fortnite or anything like that, anything online.
So I like to travel, and I also like trying new things, and I also like trying new foods. So it's really hard to not be able to do any of those things currently. But the norm, those are like my favorite activities. I am the type of person who's like, okay, I'm not gonna wait on you to come with me, but if I invite you, feel special. Like feel special that I did invite you. But definitely going out to see like what restaurants are around and like trying different things is the best. I love ice cream, so if it's the ice cream shop, I'm definitely here for it. But yeah, it's
Same.
the way to start.
I really like same. I really love to travel. Like traveling is part of my being. Like I really just like it gets me going. So the fact that I can't do anything right now is quite depressing. But I think outside of that, I'm a fat boy. I like to say at heart, people will not let me call myself fat, but the pudge is there. I'm just saying the pudge is there. But so food is definitely something that makes me really happy. So in this time, I've been like trying new recipes, looking up different things since I can't go to restaurants and try things. I've gotten pretty efficient at making what's that damn dish? It's something from Cheddar's. It's a chicken dish from Cheddar's, but like the recipe was online, so I said, why not? So at some point I might put Cheddar's out of business, but so like little things like that. That's what keeps me going. I think, especially like now with times being as strange as they are. I'm debating. Okay, I'll go with this one. So this last question comes from a young man who would like to know. Okay, I'm summarizing. He would like to know if you. It's always hard when people can't grammatically spell things and you have to like fill in the gaps. But but shout out to y'all for sending in letters. Thank you. Keep sending them. But he's asking if you could focus on one thing for a day, what would it be and why? It's interesting.
Law school related?
No, I think he may. I'm gonna say unlaw school related, just given like the topic of today. He wasn't really specific, and it's a little longer, and I don't really feel like going through the rest of it. So I'm gonna say if you could focus on one thing outside of law school for a day, what would it be and why?
I gotta think about that one for a second. Hold on.
Right. I don't know about focus necessarily on terms of like a thing, but I would say if I could go, I'm gonna amend it. If I could go somewhere for like a day, I'd go to a beach. I really like water. So like to sit out on the beach, toes out, and just like relax and hear the waves. Preferably no seagulls, but you know it is what it is. And just like be there in that moment for a day. I think I would really appreciate that a lot.
I like that you amended it. I'd say I would definitely choose a beach, but I went snowboarding for the first time over winter break. It was like the coolest thing I've done. So I'd probably try and practice on that or focus on that. It was a ton of fun. And it was one of those things where you can just kind of free your mind, kind of like running. So I threw some headphones in. I was so bad at it. Fell like, no joke, 50 times. But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I snowboarded once and almost busted my ass, literally. So it's a no for me.
It was so hard.
I'm good. I'll stick to sledding.
Okay, so I'm not doing either one of those things. Um, so I would probably like just have a full day of painting and just, let my mind do what it wants to do. Because the second thing that I would probably do would work on fitness stuff, but it's like do I really want to do that all day? So I'd rather paint because I can take my time with it and just, sit with my bottle of wine and enjoy it all day.
You know what? I too would like the bottle of wine on the beach. That you know what? I amend to that. Give me that. Minus the painting, because I did the paint and sip thing once. I mean, my giraffe turned out fine. It has a little crooked neck. It's fine, but no. I'd rather write poetry. I think that's my creative outlet in life. So I haven't done it in a while, but it is what it is. But those are all the letters I'm gonna read today. So thank you all for sending in your letters. If you would like to have a letter read on the podcast, make sure you send those in to Alexander the Great Pod, P-O-D, at gmail.com. Once again, Alexander the Great Pod at gmail.com for a chance to be read aloud in one of the final episodes of this season. All right, guys, so we're nearing the end of the episode. And before I get to the typical last question that I ask all my guests, I want to know something in terms of like the realm of self-care, self-preservation. I would like to open that to. For you guys in particular, what is something that as a minority you feel is kind of necessary in terms of self-care? Because I know there's I will be doing an episode on imposter syndrome later, right? And one thing about that is
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
No, I cannot, Siri. One thing that I talk about all the time is like those voices that you guys alluded to. And one thing for me when it comes to like self-care and those voices is recognizing that there are moments where I may not feel like I'm enough, or like I may not feel like I have the validation to do things. And like being in this profession, since it is predominantly white, you're always going to have somebody who either will make you physically feel like that or tell you that. And so for me, it's always been trying to take a step back to reevaluate my why, which is always a part of my self-care, is like hunkering down on the why aspect of like why I came to law school, why did I take this class, like why am I doing what I'm doing basically. So for you guys, what is something in terms of like self-care, self-preservation that you like hold on to throughout your journey and plan on continuing once you get into practice?
I had already mentioned like the note card that our Office of Academic Excellence had us do at the beginning of our 1 year. So having that in mind, and like you said, having your why of why you're here, why you're in law school, why are you going on this journey, has been very important, especially like with stuff that happened with our school recently. It's like, okay, why am I in law school? Why am I giving my energy and space? I could have been getting a side D or something else, because some of y'all need some mental health counseling for real, and I might need to help y'all out. So definitely like reminding myself of, oh yeah, you have clients that are going to need you one day, and you need to like help to reform the system that sucks, because you can't complain about what's happening around you if you're not going to be a part of that change. So yeah, I think that'll be more tangible as a practicing attorney compared to being a fed up law student. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with everything Joy said. For me, it's just reaching out to someone. So always having an outlet when you do feel like that. Most days I felt like that, if I'm not smart enough or I'm not working hard enough. So, calling a family member, calling close friends, I kind of vent to them a lot. So honestly, most days I'll FaceTime one of them, FaceTime my mom, FaceTime my dad, and kind of tell them what's going on. It's nice that they're always there to listen to me. I always try and do the same for them as well, but just always having that outlet that you can go to, because there are a lot of days like that where I'm like, shoot, why am I doing this? And it's nice for them to kind of, even if it's partly a lie, they're like, no, you gotta just keep doing it, but it motivates me, so it works out.
So now I have to ask you guys the tough question, like the hard question, right? I ask all my guests before we get out of here one question in particular. If you guys could offer one piece of advice to an incoming law student, so a pre-law student, and a current law student, what would it be?
So for the incoming law student, it goes towards grades again, but I'll kind of elaborate on it. It would definitely be if you're going to stress yourself out at any time, it would be during the studying process. So study, bust your butt. The second that you take that test, just like erase it from your mind. At least that's what I would say. Because for me, 1L year, I would take the test, then I would stress out about answers. I would go back, check to see if I like got some of them right. Then I would talk to my friends about the exam. So really, once you take it, there's nothing you can do. I would really just move on to the next thing. Don't spend extra time thinking about it. And then what was the second part of that question?
Current law student.
So advice for a current law student would be, I mean, really take time to yourself, I think, is a super important one. We also kind of touched on that. But if you're one of those law students that just does work throughout the day and then goes home and goes to sleep, I would say to add a hobby, work on fitness, work on building yourself outside of law school somehow, whatever hobby that may be. We hit on painting, exercise, mental health. But I think once you get one of those hobbies, it really helps you out along the way in law school as well.
I would say to do what makes you happy and to go with your gut feeling, because as a law student, it's kind of hard. You get peer pressured into doing things, and it's like, this feels like high school and not a professional establishment, but okay, why not apply for a journal and all these things under the sea? So that would be my best advice, is to just do what makes you happy and go with your gut feeling, because I know as like a 1L, everyone was like, do a journal, do a competition team. And I was just like, okay, this is cute. This is cute. But is it really for me? And I'm telling you, like, I feel so bad because I wasted like some money, like doing stuff that I didn't even continue through with, because I was just like, this is not making me happy through this process. So I'm not going to continue going through it, because no, it's just not for me.
No, that's real. So I would like to thank my guest again for stopping by, hanging out throughout the episode. If you guys experienced any technical difficulties throughout, it is okay. We are working with Zoom, so don't blame us. Blame the technology. That it is what it is. But I think you all got the gist of the conversation overall. So again, if you guys are listening on Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, make sure you rate, comment, and subscribe. And then if you guys are watching on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the episodes. Again, thanks to AJ and Joy for stopping by and hanging out with us today to talk a little bit about self-care. Remember, we only have 3 more episodes left in the season until we're done. So this is exciting. To all my law students, good luck on finals. And for those who are affected by COVID and not having a job, I apologize. I really send like my condolences to you guys, but I really do wish you guys the best. Again, thanks for hanging out with us on How to Get Away with the JD, and we will see you guys next time.